I am so excited to have 4 guests with me today from our community impact team. Um, they're so incredible with the work that they do, and they are so knowledgeable, and I can't wait for you to hear what they have to say about all of our work. We'll just go through a quick rundown of what we're going to cover in today's session, starting with the webinar logistics and housekeeping. If you've been in any of our sessions before, you'll recognize those. The goals for our session today, and then I'll start introducing our guests, starting with Stephannie Lewis, to talk about our community impact team, the theory of philanthropy, notable grant making. We'll talk about United Way 211 a little bit, the mental health and suicide prevention lifeline program, career academies, and then ending with advocacy, creating lasting change. As always, there's opportunities for you to ask questions, chime in, either taking yourself off mute and asking those questions or putting them in the chat. There'll also be a little bit of time at the end of the session for some Q&A. So if you've been in any of our sessions before, you know that all of our sessions are hosted on different Microsoft Teams links, which were included in the calendar invites. Each of those links will be posted on the homepage the day of the session in the event of last-minute attendees. You are welcome to turn on your video if you feel comfortable, but no pressure. Please keep your audio muted unless you are actively speaking, just to avoid any feedback loops or disruptions. We can mute you, but if you forget, but we cannot unmute you if you want to be heard. So please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions, comment, share experiences. I think in a session last week, we had a really great dialogue going between several of our attendees around the events going in the session, going in the chat box. So it's a really great place to have conversations about some of the content that's happening. Feel free to use the chat box anytime. We do have someone monitoring that chat box so nothing gets missed. We will also be using that to provide links for some of the content. Each of the sessions include live polls to help prompt discussion around current experiences. And we'll provide some direction when those polls come up. And as I said, there will be time at the end for some group discussion and questions, but if you do have questions throughout the session, don't be afraid to ask. We want this to be a friendly, informal learning experience for everyone. So don't be shy. All right. So by the end of the session today, we really want you to have gained a deeper understanding of some of the different aspects of our community impact work. We want you to understand how that work intersects and informs everything that we do. And we want you to feel better equipped to talk about these different things, these different topics in your workplaces throughout your campaign and throughout the year. So to kick things off, let's get to know each other a little bit better, those of us who are all on this session. Don't panic. I'm not going to ask you to speak up or put you on the spot. I'd just like you to find the chat box and open it up and type in your name, the organization you're representing today, and your perfect summer vacation spot. So think about what that looks like for you, whether it's by the lake with a book, on the deck, or in the mountains, wherever that summer vacation spot is for you. What makes you feel completely at peace and happy in the summer? Cabin time, Mexico. The mountains or by the water. Becky likes a road trip. I don't know. There's something about being trapped in the car with my family that just doesn't quite appeal to me. It's not my happy place, but that is what makes you happy. Very specific. Monterrey, Mexico, eating tacos surrounded by the mountains. Yeah. A lot of lake people, ocean people. Some Minnesotans, we like our cabins too. It's definitely a thing. I was up at the cabin this weekend with my family. Very large extended family, all crammed into one cabin, which is surprisingly my happy place, but gets a little tight. Teresa from Delta on a plane headed anywhere. I like it. All right. Well, feel free to keep throwing those in the chat. We just really want to get to know you guys. It's really fun to hear from you as we start each of these sessions with one of these prompts. It puts everybody in a happy place. So we'll continue with that interactive activity. I just have one poll question for you today. And so I'd like you to open up a new tab, go to pollev.com/GTCUW campaigns. I'll have Jane put that link in the chat box as well. And what I would like you to put in there today is just a word that comes to mind when you think about Greater Twin Cities United Way and our work in the community. What are the things that come to mind? Individual words are preferred because we're creating a word cloud here. And so if you do multiple words, it'll actually split them up, which is really irritating. But single words, whatever words come to mind when you think about us as an organization, what we do, how we do it, whatever you can think of. We'll start seeing those show up on the screen here. Thoughtful, impact, giving, helper. Yep. Feel free to put in more than one word, one at a time. Responsive. Yeah. I like the word cloud because it shows, the impact of what you guys are saying. If you're saying it more than once, it really shows up. And community and giving are the things that really come to the top here. And I really like what you guys are saying here. It helps us to get a baseline for, where you're coming from and just what you think of when you think of us and our work in the community. So feel free to keep putting anything in there if you'd like. We'll go ahead and move on. We'll save that word cloud and I'll share that when we share out the external slides. So if you were in our Unite to Fuel Change session last week, you may recognize this slide. I wanted to share it again, this one and the next one, for those of you who may not have seen it yet, and bring it back for those of you who did see it just last week, because it is very important. It's very pertinent to the work that we're going to talk about today. In every role that we play as Greater Twin Cities United Way, we bring together strategy with data, with compassion and inclusion, with equity at the center to create immediate and lasting impact in our community. And we do that in a number of ways. Through the roles we play in 5 core areas, we create lasting change. So these 5 core areas, you might be familiar with them already in different ways. So we run 211 as a bridge to thousands of resources and services. With equity at the center of our work, we invest in 100+ nonprofit partners on the front lines of community-led change. As an advocate, we influence policies and funding that support immediate community needs. As an innovator, we collaborate with donors, organizations, and community leaders to create new and impactful solutions. And as a business partner, we help companies like yours align their corporate social responsibility goals with the needs of the community. And I really like this graphic, and I keep bringing it back in all of our sessions because it does show all the different ways that we work in the community. But the important thing to remember, and especially with what we're going to talk about today, is that these roles are not siloed. The work that we do in each of these roles, the people we collaborate with, the impact that we have intersect and inform what we do as an organization. And so to take us a little bit deeper into some of this incredible work, I've invited 4 of my colleagues from our community impact team to join me today. So I'll go ahead and introduce Stephannie Lewis, the Associate Vice President of Community Impact, joining us today. Welcome, Stephannie.
Welcome. With that introduction, I don't even know if I have anything to say. I really don't. I really don't. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephannie L. Lewis, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Community Impact here at Greater Twin Cities United Way. Next slide. All right. So what you will hear from me as well as my colleagues, they're going to, share with you their work. But my job in opening the conversation is really to ground you all in our why and our what. So to get us started, we want to start with our theory of philanthropy. This was something that was developed several years ago with support of the board, but this is really aspirational. Yeah, like I mentioned, this is really aspirational about what we want to do. And it's really about disrupting the inequity and fostering a region where everyone can thrive regardless of income, race, or place, through targeted investments in support of proven practices, promising strategies, and strengthening the connective tissue among critical community partners and institutions. We really want to get to a place where homelessness is rare and non-reoccurring. We want to get to a place where there's access of culturally relevant, affordable, healthy food options for everyone. We also want to get to a place where also want to get to a place where people can, secure livable wage, full-time, permanent employment. And this is all the things that really help our region to thrive. And that's one of the things that we're working towards. And those proven practices and promising strategies and those strategic partnerships are tools or methods on how we get there, how we get closer to that, to actualizing that dream of having a vibrant region. Next slide, please. All right, so this is our sunrise visual. This is what we use a lot when we talk with our nonprofit partners, and also when we need to remind ourselves of why we do what we do. And so as you can see, it is divided between needs and outcomes. Under the needs, we have our systems change. And this is the needs that we see now, that, the increased needs in our community, that there's a need for systems change around employment, education, housing, and food insecurity. They all have greater needs, but particularly within communities of color. There are disparities around employment rates. There's our achievement gap, and there's also disparities in affordable housing and access to healthy, culturally relevant, and new and affordable food in certain zip codes of our region. And then we also have on the other side of the sunrise is that the outcomes is equity in our systems, economic opportunity, meaning livable wage, permanent employment, educational success, shrinking that achievement gap, ensuring that our children, when they go to school, they can, receive a high quality education and they can go ahead and live their dreams. And then household stability, again, ensuring that homelessness is rare. And some of the ways that we do that, is our proven practices and promising strategies, but we do that also through our capacity building. That means supporting our nonprofit partners, not just in giving them, not just investing in them just to go ahead and re-grant it out, but also investing in their staff and making sure that they are prepared and positioned to support their clients. Also in our grant making, developing those promising strategies and becoming innovative in how we invest in nonprofits, in our nonprofits. Impact measurement, whatever gets measured gets done. And so it's important for us to not just look at how many people that we are serving, but what is the impact of how we're serving them. We want to know, is funding, when we fund this program, how many lives are really being transformed? How many people are being pulled out of poverty because of the work that we do in collaboration with you all? And then systems change. Again, how are we working together collaboratively to really move the needle on some of the most pressing issues around the issues that I talked about? So how are we doing that strategically, collaboratively, and with a singular goal in mind? And that means having a region where everybody can thrive regardless of race, place, or income. Next slide, please. All right, and so I just grounded you in a little bit of our why. I want to show you the people who are really powering and propelling this work every single day. Because of lack of time, there is a second slide with the whole team of 211, and Carolina can talk a little bit more about that, but the team is rather large, but I wanted just to really focus on the programming staff. So we have the community impact team is made up of 4 teams. We have our external advocacy and external engagement, and that's led by Kristen Rosenberger, and you will hear a little bit more from her and about her work. But we consider advocacy and external engagement to be the ambassadors of United Way. Their job is to really represent our work to some of our donors and to multiple stakeholder groups. So they're a part of different kind of collaboratives, funders collaboratives, as coalition partners, nonprofit coalition partners, and other stakeholder groups. They align with our theory of philanthropy, the proven practices and promising strategies, as well as being the connective tissue, with those partners. The second team is our grant making, and as you see below, is the bread and butter of the team. That is the most notable part of our work, is our grant making. They innovate best practices and programming and partnerships that accompany our grant making. They align with our theory of philanthropy around the proven practices and promising strategies. Our 211 team, and again, you will hear more from Carolina. They are the pulse of our team. They are ground zero for all the shifts in need that are happening in the region. During COVID-19, we knew that the biggest needs were food and housing, because we pulled that information from the calls that came through to our 211 center. Also, they provide the data that advocacy uses to present to legislators to really help them to understand the greatest needs in their district. And their alignment with our theory of philanthropy is around proven practices and then strengthening the connective tissue. The next team, and it's under my team of impact strategy and execution, is our learning and impact strategy team. They are also known as the brain of our team. They provide consistent body of knowledge related to our team's work, and they are also a trusted source for all of our data. Their alignment with our theory of philanthropy is around proven practices and promising strategies. The last team under my team is the operations team, and they're known as the muscle. They ensure that the investments are deployed efficiently, but they also make sure that the processes leading up to that deployment are also efficient. So they examine a lot of the internal processes and practices to ensure that we are getting those dollars out the door very quickly. And I think when I talk about the COVID-19 as well as the rebuild funds, they powered, really made sure that we got dollars out of the door within less than a month from the time we raised the funds. And then there's my role as Associate Vice President, or as my boss would like to refer to me, as the Air Traffic Controller. I drive efficiency in our systems and processes on the team, but also making sure that those processes, that we're making progress towards our goals. Proven practices and promising strategies is my alignment with theory of philanthropy. And finally, we have our Senior Vice President, Akua Ellis, who is the Chief Ambassador for the Community Impact Team. She holds the strategy for the entire team, but she also champions our work to her multiple external partners in the community. And she aligns with all 3 of our the bullet points under our theory of philanthropy: the proven practices, the promising strategy, and strengthening the connective tissue. Next slide, please. So I know this is all the things that you wanted to hear. This is the most exciting part, I guess, to a lot of people, is about our notable grant making. And first up is our COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. That received a lot of press. One, because of just the sheer volume of dollars that we got out of the door very quickly, and it existed in 4 different phases. A lot of what you've heard in the media was about the first 2 phases, where we raised a considerable amount of money, and we got that out. We turned that out and got that out the door within less than 2 to 3 weeks from raising it. Again, we raised more than $5 million, and we distributed it to across the state, as well as to the United Ways in other markets within the state of Minnesota. Again, the majority of our dollars were distributed in the first 2 phases, and the investments were made in technical assistance and capacity building for funded nonprofit partners, and also to help them support their clients or their communities in getting access to food and to keeping their places, into whatever they needed the money for. That's what we provided. But we really wanted to make sure that the organizations that we were supporting, because a lot of these organizations did not have the ability to pivot very quickly, because a lot of their work is doing direct service. So we provided those dollars so they could be able to service their populations in a virtual environment. And now we have our Twin Cities Rebuild for the Future Fund. That was a fund to support businesses, particularly Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, and immigrant businesses that were impacted by the civil unrest last summer. And they were along the corridors of University Avenue, Lake Street, and Broadway Avenue. This funding came in 3 phases. We raised more than $3 million. And again, 77% of the funds raised was distributed during the first phase. And we awarded to 11 entrepreneurial service organizations or intermediaries to support rebuilding efforts. So organizations like NEON, the Lake Street Council, the Asian Economic Development Association, all received dollars to regrant to businesses that needed support in rebuilding their businesses after the civil unrest. So I just wanted to share a little bit about, give you a high level understanding of community impact and our why and our what. And I will turn it back over to Megan to continue the conversation. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you, Stephannie. Are there any questions right now? I know that was just a lot of information that Stephannie gave us. Really great information about our team, about how we work, and especially the notable grant making, the COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund, the Twin Cities Rebuild for the Future Fund. I know that a lot of you participated in the fundraising for that. A lot of you contributed to that and helped us share that work. So thank you for all of that support. Without your support in that, we wouldn't have been able to do everything that Stephannie said we did this last year. So if you do have any questions, again, feel free to take yourself off mute if you're feeling brave. Otherwise, feel free to put it in the chat and we can answer those questions. You can also email us after the session. So, all right. So, how many of you have heard of 211? I'd like you to raise your Microsoft Teams virtual hand. You can find it at the top of your bar. Okay. Elliot, you don't count. You're part of the team. Okay, there's a few of you. All right. Good. Well, it means we're doing our job telling you about 211. So 211 is one of my favorite things to talk about when I go out and talk to companies. Mostly just because it is a very tangible, data-driven way to connect with our work. It's something that people can really connect with because of its tangibility. And Greater Twin Cities United Way's 211 resource helpline is available 24/7 and in over 100 languages. It is staffed by certified community resource specialists who are trained to provide referrals to resources and services, including housing, food, childcare, education, and employment. 211 specialists leverage over 40,000 statewide resources to help provide those referrals, and they address 52 urgent needs every hour, or approximately 460,000 referrals every year to critical information and services. So if you think about 52 urgent needs an hour, the number of calls and conversations that our specialists have every day, all day long, helping people, connecting them with the resources that they need, helping them to figure out what they need. Because if you're calling 211, you might not know what you need, you just know that you need help. So having that resource can be life-saving for a lot of people. We also leverage the data that we receive from 211 to provide insights on community needs with state and local policymakers, creating meaningful change on a foundational level. And as Stephannie said, during the first few months of the pandemic, 211 responded to a 300% increase in calls, many of which were regarding housing concerns. And COVID-19 has exacerbated the housing crisis in the Twin Cities region due to job loss and economic uncertainty. And the CARES Act funding to cover late rent and mortgage bills has ended, and access to the housing resources continues to be the #1 need for individuals and families with low incomes. Nearly 60% of all calls to the 211 resource helpline are related to housing. And on any given night in the greater Twin Cities, 6,700 people experience homelessness. And so knowing that and using that information, we were able to help secure $100 million in emergency housing assistance last year. We also served as a centralized access point for the COVID-19 housing assistance program, connecting thousands of people to rent, mortgage, and utility assistance from August through early December. And now in partnership with Greater Twin Cities United Way's 211 Resource Helpline, the state of Minnesota recently launched Rent Help MN, which is a new rental assistance program that makes it possible for low and moderate income renters to get caught up on overdue rent and utilities. Programs is seeing a huge response right now, with a handful of 211 specialists fielding approximately 6,000 calls a week. So 6,000 calls a week is tremendous. That just shows the kind of need that is still out there in our community. If you think about getting behind on one payment, it's so much harder to catch up. And so to have those CARES Act dollars and that eviction moratorium end, it is a really scary place to be in for a lot of our neighbors. And so being able to help support that program, being part of that program, is something that we're really proud of. So 211 it's a very tangible data-focused example, like I said, of the direct impact that your dollars can have in the community. And not only is it a great program to talk about with your employees, it's also a great resource to share with them through your flyers, through intranet posts and links, and through your HR connections. You never know who in your organization might be experiencing challenges at home or what forms they might take. So we can provide those resources, including a new resource that our next guest is going to talk about today. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Carolina, who is going to talk with us about our mental health and suicide prevention lifeline program, which is not part of our 211 umbrella, but it is similar to 211 in that it responds to those services and helps address that need that is out there in the community. So welcome.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for the introduction. Next slide, Megan. So my name is Carolina, and I oversee the Suicide Prevention Lifeline Program. We're on our mental health initiative. Our Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a new program, as Megan mentioned. We've been operating the Suicide Prevention Lifeline since January of this year. We're part of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is a lead agency in the country in terms of suicide prevention. So we are very happy to partner with them and to be able to follow all the evidence-based practices. What we've been learning in terms of the work that we're doing is that barriers to mental health definitely increase the risk of suicide. So if we think about any barriers that we encounter, either financially or because there are stigmas attached to mental health and our ability to reach out for help, given our maybe cultural belief system, anything that we're learning that creates a barrier increases the risk of suicide in any community at any age. One of the most powerful stigmas that we've had identified is barriers that we have identified is the stigma. And I want us just to reflect a little bit in our lives about what we've been told growing up about talking about mental health, right? That's something that if we think about in our own communities, is it something that has been acceptable for us to reach out and talk about our struggles, our emotional struggles, and even if we're having some suicidal ideation, is that something that we can freely talk to anyone in our community? So let's reflect a little bit about that, because that's what we've been hearing from the communities, that part of not feeling comfortable talking to others, not even to family members, about mental health issues, suicidal ideation, because of that stigma that is attached to it. Also, cost of treatment often associated to mental health services is a huge barrier. Not everyone has access. Some communities actually don't have any providers, mental health providers accessible, and everything becomes really to understand, to navigate the mental health system, and that how can they pay for something, what is lowest scale fee, what is free, what is not. So sometimes communities rather just to stay quiet and try to deal with their own issues, which sometimes we know we need help. We need help to deal with our mental health issues. Interesting data coming from research from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is the leading agency that funds mental health programs in the country, shows that there is a significant decrease in suicide ideation for individuals who contact suicide crisis hotlines. So this is super important. It's huge in terms of evidence-based practices to know that within the first 5 minutes, and this is what evidence-based is, scientific data, within the first 5 minutes of someone reaching out to our phone and speaking with a crisis counselor, the suicidal ideation can decrease. So the first 5 minutes that we are with someone on the phone are crucial to be able to decrease the suicidal ideation. Next, Megan. So to give you a little bit more of overview of what we do, and hoping that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them more in terms of the evidence base that we've been following and implementing. Our local crisis center, operated by Greater Twin Cities United Way, as I mentioned, is part of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is the leading agency in suicide prevention. So we're part of the 180 crisis centers in the country. So we're happy that now we are here in Minnesota, covering 35 counties. Which you can see it in the map of Minnesota, that are connected to our lifeline. So the way that operates is the callers reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, that I can put it in the chat. Of Megan, if you want to put it on the chat for people, so that they reach to the national number, which is 800 number, and then depending on the area code of the phone number, they're routed to us. To any of those 35 counties that we cover, they're routed to us, and we are able to provide crisis intervention and suicide risk assessment. For the past 6 months, which is for us, has been like, obviously we have been very busy. We have received 10,800 calls, which like in the past 2 months, based on the most recent reports I was running for you all, we respond to about 80 calls a day. Some days are busier than others. We had identified certain days, like Tuesdays and weekends, tend to be more congested in terms of the volume of calls we get. We're free, we're confidential, we are available 24/7 the entire year. Our work basically is to be able to engage in active listening, to provide emotional support, to be able to de-escalate. Our protocol is basically to engage in the least restrictive interventions, which means we do our best to escalate, but unless we're not able to keep that person safe, we reach out to emergency responders. But that is, so we do risk assessment, and then if needed, we provide mental health resources for those scholars if that's what they also are in need of. As is mentioned in my first comment, suicide is preventable in the sense that it's understanding, obviously, that suicide is a combination of many, many different factors in someone's life. It's not the result of one single thing, but the ability to access mental health services definitely helps for someone to be able to figure out what's going on, get the resources, and in that regard, suicide is preventable. So the good news is that now we are at Greater Twin Cities United Way, through our Suicide Prevention Lifeline Program, able to be part of that prevention by directly being able to serve those scholars who are in emotional crisis. So if you have any questions, happy to answer, and if not, definitely check the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline website. It has all the information about how the crisis centers operate in the country, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and call them out or put them in the chat. I know that Jane has put the website link in there, and then also the phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So if you do want to follow up on any of this, let us know. We're happy to bring more information about this resource to you, to your employees, if this is something that you're interested in. I know it's a little bit more of a heavy subject to talk about, and we talked in our Unite to Fuel Change session about how to balance that heavy subject matter, those challenging topics to talk about, with the concept of having a fun time with our campaigns, wanting to boost morale and bring people together. And that is possible. It is very possible to do both and to hold both things at the same time. By messaging in different ways, by making sure to address the issues up front, and then talking about what we're doing to address them, like having this helpline, this lifeline, and then how people can get involved and help. And then I think the way that people can get involved and help here is really to just talk about it, talk about this lifeline, talk about mental health, destigmatize mental health. I think that is something that Carolina really talked about. It's really crucial. And that's something that, we at Greater Twin Cities United Way are really working to help with in different areas of our community. So again, any questions, just let us know. Very quiet bunch this morning. And with that, I'd like to introduce our next guest here, Liz Williams, with our Career Academies program. Again, you may have heard a little bit of Career Academies, as we've talked. I know if you've ever worked with me, I've probably brought up Career Academies because it's one of my favorite programs to talk about with our innovation work. If you go back to that 5 roles, we're talking about that innovation aspect of our work. But I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about Career Academies from Liz here today. So welcome, Liz.
Thanks, Megan, and hi, everyone. Like Megan said, my name is Liz, and I'm a program officer with Career Academies. I'm really excited to share with you all just a little bit more about Career Academies today. So in Career Academies, where we really begin our work is understanding the need in our community from a place of seeing the excellence that already exists in youth and teachers and in community. We really believe that students have this powerful potential, and we know that the teachers in our community are committed to supporting their excellence. However, we also know that there are gaps in our education and our workforce systems that are cutting this kind of potential short. In Minnesota, we're projected to have nearly 400,000 unfilled jobs by 2024, and 63% of those jobs are going to require some kind of education beyond high school. So whether it's a 4-year degree or a technical degree, they'll require some kind of education beyond high school. And yet our state also has one of the largest graduation gaps in the nation for high school students of color and low-income students. And often even students who are graduating are really not fully prepared for college level curriculum, or what we often see, which is an interest in pursuing college and career, but without a clear plan or understanding of their own interests and strengths and how it connects to their future self and aspirations and career path. So what we see here and saw when Career Academy started in 2015 was a real need for greater collaboration among different stakeholders. And for us, that includes employers, education systems, and the community at large. Next slide. So based on this need, as well as this incredible potential that we know exists in our community, Career Academies was launched at Greater Twin Cities United Way in 2015. Our vision for wealth building in our community is that Twin Cities youth have these clear pathways through college, which again is whatever that looks like for each individual students, toward wealth building, purpose-driven careers with zero college debt. And that's sort of our North Star, like a best case scenario for us that we build towards. So this model comes from a nationally proven career pathways model that comes from the Jobs for the Future, which is housed out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And in this model, there's a partnership and alignment of school districts, post-secondary education institutions, local industries, and the real goal is to engage students with experiences so that they can explore careers, earn college credit in high school and industry credentials toward wealth building and purpose-driven careers. This model has been replicated across the country in a diversity of communities in areas that are rural and urban and suburban by utilizing a community's own individual strengths and their assets and their local industry as real key partners in the education space. We can go to the next slide. And so to really give a little more structure and clarity around kind of like what is Career Academies, for us, we have core components that drive this work. So keeping that vision in mind that we're aiming toward Twin Cities youth having clear pathways through college to wealth building, purpose-driven careers with zero college debt. For us, there's really four main components within Career Academies. Again, these are based on local and national evidence. So the first in these core components is that pathway courses should be in high wage, high demand career fields. Often those are really designed and driven by a national economy, a global economy, but also a local economy as well. It's really critical that in career pathways, the courses are reflective of the current and the future economy. The next is that each career pathway has a minimum of 12 college credits. Again, that's a North Star. So for example, if a student was in a manufacturing pathway, they should really have access to 12 college credits throughout the college sequence. And that's important for a couple reasons. One, as we talk about wealth building and aiming for zero college debt, taking these kind of courses in high school is a much lower risk than taking courses, as many of us know, in college, where you may or may not enjoy what you're taking. It's a lower risk when you're taking it in high school and for free. The next reason is really that it builds confidence in young people to be able to take a college course while you're in high school and builds that confidence for moving on to your next phase after high school. The next component is rigorous and relevant course curriculum that's informed by industry partners. So it's important that curriculum that exists in high school isn't operating sort of in a silo. It should be reflective, we believe, of what's happening in the local economy. And then lastly, which is one of the most critical components of a Career Academies pathway, is that there are access to work experiences for young people that are paid and that are relevant. We see this as a component that's engaging for young people, but also, again, as a low-risk way for students to explore different career paths that they might be interested in. Next slide. So Career Academies is a proven model that has already worked for nearly 10,000 students in 40 career pathways across 16 partner districts since it started in 2015. So I wanted to share some of this proven impact with you all. One of the things we are most excited about in Career Academies is that there is a higher engagement overall for students of color in Career Academies than other programs statewide, which really demonstrates that there is interest and there's capability among students in all communities. And this kind of equitable approach and systems change can help address the opportunity gap. We've also seen and are very excited by this, that our students in Career Academies have saved nearly or over $3 million in tuition by earning those college credits in high school. We also see that Career Academy students have an average attendance of more than 3 days a year compared with non-Career Academy students, which for us is a real indicator of the engagement that students are experiencing in their career pathways. And then lastly, Career Academy shows a promising trend in wage growth, which is really kind of like the so what at this point of career pathways. So with one of our district partners, there was a statistically significant difference in wages earned between Career Academies students and non-Career Academies students. And this particular district showed this $2.80 increase in hourly wages for Career Academies students. And this is really important because it demonstrates progress that Career Academies is making toward closing the racial wealth disparities gap in our community. Next slide. So we've proven this model in communities across the state of Minnesota, again, in urban spaces, suburban spaces, and rural as well. And one of the really unique roles that the United Way plays is as an intermediary in the career pathway space. So we provide these targeted investments to catalyze innovations that are happening in communities and at school districts. But our role really goes beyond the funding. So we also convene our partners in the career pathway space. We are connecting and facilitating relationships in our community. We're setting a shared vision for equitable education through Career Academies. And we also provide technical assistance to our partners because we are experts in the career pathway space. So as we move on with Career Academies, we're really focusing on and thinking about how we can broaden and deepen pathways because, like I said, we know it works. We're ensuring that these pathways are aligned with high wage and high demand career fields, but that they're also honoring student voice and student agency. We're supporting systems to work together for seamless transitions. So for example, ensuring that a student's transition from high school to college or high school to technical school is really seamless and that they can build on their experiences throughout their educational life. And we're also building our statewide community of practice so that innovators in this space can connect and grow and support all of the brilliant young people that we have in Minnesota. And next slide. And so for me, I think there's like so much that we could talk about with the impact of Career Academies, but to really bring it home and kind of why we do this work and why it matters, it's about the students. So I recently had the opportunity to meet this young person whose name is Rosie. She recently graduated from a Career Academies partner high school this spring. Rosie was the first in her family to go to college, and throughout high school, she had this curiosity about healthcare and education, and she decided to try both of them while she was in high school, again, because she was at a Career Academies high school. She ended up really loving some of the hands-on components of her healthcare careers coursework. She talked for a while with us about how much she loved doing blood testing in her coursework, which I think is such a unique opportunity. But through those experiences, she knew that this was the kind of career path that would work for her. So she was able to earn college credit for free while she was in high school. She even got her certified nursing assistant certification paid for while she was in high school, which she then used to get a great paying job in her own community. Rosie plans to study nursing in college and eventually become a nurse practitioner. And so I think from this story, what we really see is that building on a young person's curiosity, like Rosie, her curiosity around healthcare, she's now leaving high school with this very clear trajectory. She has an understanding of her own strengths and interests. She has a dedicated support system. And she has nearly a semester of college credit, placing her on this very clear pathway toward building wealth for herself and her community. And that is it for today. So I hope if anyone has any questions, yeah, happy to answer. And thanks, Megan, for the invite today.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I love that story about Rosie. That just goes to show how valuable career academies can be in helping to just really lock into that curiosity that students have, you know, because they are so curious. You know, middle school, high school kids are so curious. They want to find out what they want to do. They want to figure out who they are, and this is just such a great way for them to really be able to explore that and set them up for success. So we really appreciate you talking about those opportunities today. If you're interested in sharing information about career academies or other programs like career academies, we have several. We have all kinds of resources for you. We have stories that are already written. We have blog posts. We have, if you're on Philanthropy Cloud, if you're a Philanthropy Cloud user with us, we have story cards like this one around Career Academies that include, the image, they have the text, they have the video, everything is all prepackaged for you, so you don't even have to build it yourself. You don't have to write anything yourself. It's already there and ready for you to just pull over onto your homepage. Just really great ways to connect with your employees, to let them know what's out there, and the different kinds of ways that we are working in the community. So I mentioned before Liz started talking that this is, highlighting that innovator role. But as you heard throughout her segment, it's not just about the innovator role, it's also about those business partnerships, the nonprofit partnerships, partnering with the community, the school districts, the industry leaders. There's so many different ways that we all intersect through those roles, and Career Academies is such a great example of the ways that those intersect. If there are other things that you want to share with your employees, other resources or stories, talk with your United Way team. People like me, we can help curate a bank of stories, videos, written resources for you to share and to deploy throughout your campaign and throughout the year. And now I'm excited to introduce Kristen Rosenberger, our Director of Advocacy and External Engagement, to talk about our advocacy work and close us out for the day. Speaking of intersecting roles and the ways that our work really feeds into each other, I feel like advocacy is the one that really kind of brings it all together and kind of hits it home for us. So thanks for joining us, Kristen.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me here, Megan, and for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. As the Director of Advocacy and External Engagement, as Megan mentioned, I'm just really excited to be here today and talk about our advocacy work. So why don't we jump in and go to the next slide. One of the things I think it's always important to do is just to take a step back and define, what is advocacy? It's just one of those small words that represents so much. It's got so much packed into it. And each of us kind of comes to the discussion or today's meeting, I think, with a slightly different idea about what advocacy might mean to them. But most importantly, at United Way, advocacy is really about taking action to create positive change. So that means all of you are already experienced advocates. So let me give you an example. Maybe you've addressed a problem at school with your child's teacher, or you've championed like a successful project and outcome by a colleague at work. These are all examples of advocating on behalf of others to make a positive change. And that's what we do here at United Way. We just take it up a couple notches. So our advocacy efforts are really focused on solving the root problems that create barriers for communities in the first place. And unfortunately, we know, particularly over the past year, even more so, that these challenges really disproportionately impact Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and have really led to the gaping racial disparities our state is grappling with today. So this is where our advocacy really comes into play and becomes powerful by promoting policy solutions that can directly address the inequities. So as many of you know, United Way has a strong history of advancing nonpartisan policy change in the state. For more than a decade, we've lifted up early childcare and education as a top priority at the Capitol. And these efforts were tremendously successful. They led to historic advancements that continue today to benefit nearly 20,000 children and families from low wealth households every year. So seeing this transformative impact, we decided to broaden our advocacy to include all of our impact areas in 2020. So that includes housing, nutrition, education more broadly than early childhood, and economic or workforce sort of opportunity. And because barriers experienced by families and individuals in these core areas are often caused by inequitable systems, we focus our advocacy on positive systems change. So you'll probably have heard or seen that word used several times today, and that's what we mean. We're changing these systems in a very positive way. So we do this by amplifying community voices to identify and lift up real-time community needs and issues. We educate government leaders, always very important, about community needs and what are the opportunities to actually improve these systems. Many times there's just a complete lack of awareness of issues and the solutions that we can use to tackle them. And then again, as we come into the next piece is advancing these real solutions. And we typically like to co-develop these with a number of diverse partners and really get a 360 view on what are all the options and how do we tackle those. So let's go to the next slide. I think our advocacy is clearly most visible during each year's legislative session. Typically that runs January through March, but actually, May, legislation usually ends the session in May, but effective advocacy is actually a year-round undertaking. So during the summer, so say for now, immediately following session, which finally did end in June with a special session, we can focus on what we call downloading and documenting. And this provides a period of reflection to identify like what happened during the session, what were our successes, where do gaps still remain? And it's also a great time to reach out to legislators, develop and deepen our relationships with them, you know, to really educate them about our priorities and directly answer questions they may have. They're really busy during session generally, so it's really hard to introduce new concepts or talk deeply with them during that time. So off session is this perfect time to do this. So it's generally considered a quiet time, I guess, for lawmakers who just have more time to meet and discuss the issues that are not only important to their districts, but also across the state. So while we continue to reach out and develop new partners and issue champions at the Capitol, we also use this time to shift our focus to the development of the next year's advocacy agenda. And this process really lays the foundation from which our advocacy is built. And we do this by seeking expertise and knowledge from our nonprofit partners, our amazing staff, our 211 data, our coalition partners, and our broader stakeholders. And our goal with this process is to answer several questions. First and foremost, what are communities' greatest needs and priorities for our impact areas? What are we seeing happening on the ground here today? And how do we take a long-term approach to solutions? What issues should we maybe add to our agenda, remove? Should we update or edit some of them? Is there a finer point we should add to our language and nuance it more specifically to be more relevant in today's, sort of atmosphere, I should say. So we purposely give a tremendous amount of time and attention to this process, which actually takes place over 5 months, because this really helps to ensure we provide adequate time for input and feedback to develop a well-informed draft agenda before we seek internal leadership approvals. So I think it's interesting. Any issue, any decision related to policy, including our annual advocacy agenda, requires a very stringent 2/3 approval from the full board before it can be finalized and is ready to share publicly. So once we have an approved agenda, it's go time. And we move into active advocacy, obviously during the legislative session. And this is where it's obviously a whole lot of fun. I also get a lot of questions at this point of like, well, what does advocacy really mean? Like, how do you do that? What does it actually look like in practice? So we can answer that in a lot of ways because we have to engage in many different tactics during session based on where bills are at and being pipelined for approval. So I'll just share a couple examples to give you a little better picture. So it could include asking our networks to reach out to legislators with a targeted message at a specific time, often using pre-written emails that we call action alerts. And we've sent nearly 3,500 of these types of emails to state leaders over the past year. So that has a huge impact at the Capitol to hear what people care about, what they think the solutions are, and where we see their role in carrying those out. There's also times when we want maybe like a broader public audience to get like really rallied up or be aware of an issue. So we could author an opinion piece in the paper. We could pitch a story to media. We write blogs and engage with social media. So in the past couple months, we've worked closely on these kinds of things with the Star Tribune, the MinnPost, Mankato Free Press, and the Reformer. So those are just some examples of how do we share that message and provide broader education of an issue. And then, you know, as I mentioned before, there's really nothing that can replace one-on-one legislator meetings, even if there is a Zoom meeting, to share our priorities, provide them data to support our case, and answer like a specific question that they might have. Sometimes they're just hung up on a specific issue and we can provide some greater clarity for them or give them a great talking point that they can carry forward themselves. And several of our nonprofit partners have joined us for these conversations. So that's been really fun. They bring to life the issues in a tangible way to legislators. They really share their stories and their work on the ground and really bring to life what are the challenges and barriers or successes that we can celebrate and share on the ground. We also provide testimony at legislative committee hearings to support a specific bill, perhaps, or publish a letter that others can sign on their support, similar to kind of like a petition. And then we can't leave out the many events and rallies that support our advocacy, including our sponsorship of Homeless Day on the Hill and leading Advocacy for Children's Day, which is a really fun rally with a couple hundred toddlers at the Capitol once we can get back in person. So that's a really fun experience and very impactful. So I guess in short, those are a couple examples of what we do on the ground as tactics for advocacy. But I think it also demonstrates it really takes all of us to engage in effective advocacy. And when we work together, when we can really leverage our coalitions, our partners, our stakeholders, when everyone engages, even in a small way, we can realize big impact. So let's go to the next slide. So I'll just kind of go through here. I think it's just important that to maximize our impact, we really take a multi-pronged approach, and it really leverages our unique position. As I said, we have a nonpartisan perspective. We can share a collective knowledge. Again, tap into this 211 data. We're seeing 6,000 calls a week right now for rent assistance. It's so important that we share this with lawmakers so they know what's actually happening in real time on the ground. So we advocate for critical issues and community needs, not party politics, right? And I think it's important to just share that we are directly informed by our nonprofit partners. So we really work closely with them to inform our agenda and then to advocate with them at the Capitol. I think, why don't we move to the next slide? And I just want to take a minute before we kind of wrap up, because I know it's been a long morning, is just some session highlights. Like, I won't go through these in detail, but I do want to note that we've had a lot of successes to celebrate coming out of this year's legislative session. And it's just really important that we understand how important this work is, and if we come together, how we can really move the bar. So, you know, Megan and others have talked about rental assistance, never been more important. Last year, we were able to help secure $100 million for rent assistance, and that really helped inform and highlight the need for this nationally. We had almost $520 million that have come into our state under Rent Help MN. As she mentioned, 211 is really connecting community members to those resources that'll impact an estimated 50,000 or more families and really prevent homelessness, keep them stably housed, and make sure that their families are safe and healthy. You've probably heard a lot about in the news about an eviction moratorium off-ramp. So we really, helped to work and make sure that that off-ramp is really reasonable and provided protections once the moratorium ended, that there weren't mass evictions. And I think some of the other successes in the childcare sector, so important. We have some grants coming in the door, and the hundreds of millions of dollars are going to help improve access and also provide supports for our fragile early care providers. In many states, 75% of care providers have closed the doors. We're at 25% here in Minnesota, so definitely a critical concern, but we've able to sort of stem the tide compared to other states. So not a good story, but one we're trying to, again, stabilize. And then I think it's important just to mention our workforce pathways. Really important that we get folks into career pathway jobs that they can earn a living and advance. And so $14 million to a grant program that helps really create development and training grants for those people, particularly in targeted communities where they're seeing a lot of inequities, a lot of job loss from the pandemic. So I am going to stop there. I think, just want to say again, creating this aligned momentum results in greater impact. And we're just really excited to be continuing and growing this work at United Way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate this, especially this slide, because it does show the impact that the advocacy work that you've been working so hard on over this past year is having in our community, in the millions of dollars in grants that are coming in to stabilize these, as part of broader partnerships with our community partners, our nonprofit partners. business partners, people in our community who really do care about the same things that we care about, coming together to talk about these issues and to really fight for the things that they care about. So thank you for sharing all of this. This is fantastic information.
Thank you.
Is there any questions for Kristen about our advocacy work or any of our other guests today? All right. Well, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as always. If you're feeling brave, take yourself off mute. Still waiting for someone to take me up on that one. If you think of questions after the fact, go ahead and email us. There's also a short survey if you're interested in filling it out. We'd love to hear from you. This is the same survey that we have just after every session. So if you've attended multiple sessions, just know that it's the same one. We just ask how helpful the information was to you for your campaign, for planning purposes, for how you communicate with your employees, any additional feedback. You can remain anonymous if you so choose. And then if there's anything else that you want to know more about, or if there's things that you would like help with, there's an opportunity for you to include that here as well. And we will follow up with you directly. Your United Way team will follow up with you directly. So at the very beginning of the session, there was a whole list of all the different sessions that are upcoming here. Later today, we have communication strategies and resources. Tomorrow, we have Volunteer United coming in the morning to talk with us. We have virtual, in-person, and hybrid events in the afternoon, and then closing out with our complete partnership with some of my colleagues here on Thursday. So there are a few more sessions this week. If you are interested in joining us, feel free to register for those sessions. I believe Jane put the link in the chat there. So if there are no other questions, feel free
Megan?
to. Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry if you said this at the beginning of the session, but will these slides be made available?
They will. Yes. So
Okay.
the session is, that's a great question. And I apologize if I didn't address that at the beginning. The sessions are all recorded, and the recordings will be available as a YouTube link, a YouTube video link, once all the sessions are completed. And then each of the presentations for each of the sessions will be made available in an external facing slide deck for all of you, for all the attendees, and for all the folks who couldn't make it but wanted to attend. So great question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for putting this on. This was just
Yeah.
wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts, comments? Feel free to share. If not, we'll give you 3 minutes back in your day. Valuable time. And thank you so much.